Section 1. In this section, you will hear a conversation between a tenant attempting to resolve an unexpected maintenance fine and a property manager who insists conflicting rules were followed. The pace is quick and details may contradict subtly, but first you have time to go through questions 1 to 5.
Hi, this is Daniel from Flat 4B. I received a notice saying I violated the maintenance access policy last Thursday, but I never received any appointment confirmation.
I understand your concern, but according to our logs, you acknowledged the appointment via the residence portal.
I checked that page 4 times. There was a banner saying pending scheduling, nothing confirmed.
The confirmation was sent at 11:58 p.m. the night before. It's timestamped on our server, although some residents reported seeing it later due to a synchronization bug.
That sounds like the system's fault, not mine. The notice says I owe a fee for obstructing access, which I couldn't have prepared for.
Even with delays, the system shows you logged in early morning, but our system marks any login after midnight as acknowledgement.
That's extremely misleading. No one expects an 11:58 p.m. confirmation for a morning entry.
The maintenance team insists they rang the bell 3 times.
I was home. The hallway sensor didn't activate, which means no one approached my door.
The sensor has intermittent gaps. The maintenance team said the hallway light flickered. Possibly the sensor didn't register their movement.
So the sensor might be wrong, the confirmation might be late, but I'm still fined?
It's the current policy. But if you can demonstrate that the system error prevented you from preparing, there may be an appeal process, though it rarely overturns fees.
Before you hear the rest of the audio, you have time to go through questions 6 to 10.
So what exactly counts as reasonable notice?
The policy states 12 hours, but a late-night confirmation is still considered valid, even if impractical.
That defeats the purpose of notice. 12 hours means usable time, not past midnight technicalities.
The policy hasn't been updated since the portal redesign. There's debate on whether timestamp interpretation should be adjusted.
Meanwhile, tenants pay fines for inconsistencies.
I agree it's messy, but enforcement is automated. Once the system flags it, we have limited control.
If the platform shows pending scheduling, tenants reasonably assume nothing is finalized.
That wording is from an older interface component. It doesn't always reflect the most recent backend status.
So both the wording and the timing are misleading.
In fairness, most residents still manage to comply.
Only because they constantly refresh the app looking for silent updates.
I can escalate your case, but you must submit a statement outlining the discrepancy.
I'll do that, but this is exactly why your system needs transparency.
Section 2. In this section, you will hear a monologue about a scientific analysis of microhabit loops and how subtle interruptions reshape cognitive patterns. The pace is rapid and meaning is often implied. But first you have time to go through questions 1 to 5.
When we examine micro-habit loops, we typically imagine discrete actions repeating predictably, yet real behavior diverges in quiet irregularities. Most individuals assume consistency, when in fact subconscious interruptions, momentary hesitations, sensory fluctuations, even ambient noise shift the neurological reinforcement pathway. That means the brain logs habit completion even when intentions fragment. These unnoticed fragments accumulate, creating a false sense of continuity. Consider how you might reach for your phone, hesitate as a thought intrudes, then proceed. You'd label it one action, but neurologically it splits into several micro-events. The brain interprets this as multiple reinforcements, even though you consciously recall only one. When we analyze oscillatory patterns, we find neural spikes do not occur during execution, but during the transitions between impulses. These transition gaps, fractions of seconds, carry the highest cognitive weight. It's in those gaps that your intentions recalibrate, sometimes contradicting your larger goals. This explains why habits that seem stable on the surface unravel under scrutiny. People believe their routines are linear because they recall the general flow, not the minute shifts that redirect underlying motivation. In reality, habit stability is a constructed illusion generated by memory compression.
Before you hear the rest of the audio, you have time to go through questions 6 to 10.
When we expand this model, complexity increases because interruptive cues compete for neurological priority. A distant sound, a subtle shift in temperature, or a fleeting memory can reorder micro-intentions without conscious detection. Some cues never reach awareness, yet they still reroute neural energy toward alternate actions. Neuroimaging reveals that the prefrontal cortex recalibrates its priorities milliseconds before the conscious mind detects any shift, demonstrating that we assign meaning after the brain has already chosen the path. This gap between cortical action and conscious narrative widens when individuals operate under cognitive load or emotional strain. Even highly disciplined individuals exhibit these discontinuities. Their reported internal experiences appear linear, but their cortical timelines reveal abrupt dips, microlapses where the brain temporarily abandons the active sequence. These lapses, though brief, influence how motivation accumulates or dissipates over days. Over time, these discontinuities compound. Motivation does not erode because a person loses discipline, but because micro-interruptions accumulate until the habitual loop loses coherence. That explains why identical routines may feel effortless one day and disproportionately draining the next. These shifts are not failures of willpower. They represent the brain's constant negotiation between competing micro-priorities. Understanding this reframes habit formation not as a battle of discipline, but as the management of countless microscopic neural negotiations.
Section 3. In this section, you will hear two university researchers discussing conflicting interpretations of community-based environmental monitoring. But first you have time to go through questions 1 to 5.
I've reviewed the preliminary field notes, but I'm concerned the volunteer observations are biased by optimism.
That's possible, yet the data clusters still reveal genuine ecological shifts.
But the volunteers tend to report improvements even when sensor logs show stagnation or mild decline.
They might be interpreting micro-variations as meaningful progress?
Precisely my point. Pattern projection. They expect positive change and unconsciously force alignment.
Still, discarding their input removes the social dimension.
I'm not suggesting removal, just contextual correction.
Then recalibrate the weighting?
Yes, though that risks undermining the participatory model.
Unless we present it as algorithmic stabilization rather than correction.
Before you hear the rest of the audio, you have time to go through questions 6 to 10.
Another issue is time granularity. Volunteers observe continuously, whereas sensors log at fixed intervals,
That mismatch might exaggerate discrepancies.
or conceal them. A sensor might miss a brief but significant disturbance.
Yet volunteers might overinterpret trivial fluctuations.
Exactly why integration is delicate. Neither dataset is independent of cognitive expectation.
We might need a hybrid model that dynamically adjusts based on deviation thresholds.
That risks algorithmic opacity. Communities may distrust invisible adjustments.
True, but leaving inconsistencies unchecked reduces scientific integrity.
Which is why transparent explanation is essential, even if it complicates dissemination.
Section 4. In this section, you will hear a lecture describing shifting theoretical interpretations of early settlement patterns in arid landscapes. But first you have time to go through questions 1 to 5.
When we explore early settlement patterns in arid regions, most interpretations rely on proximity-based reasoning. Communities cluster around predictable water sources. Yet excavations reveal dwellings established at perplexing distances from primary water veins. This suggests inhabitants prioritized temporal reliability rather than accessibility. Seasonal reservoirs, though inconsistent in volume, offered a strategic advantage precisely because of their remoteness. Groups could avoid rival populations, control movement corridors, and reduce unpredictable encounters. This aspect of defensive spatial planning is frequently overlooked because it challenges the long-standing assumption that water scarcity forces centralization. Instead, scarcity often disperses populations when the risk of territorial conflict outweighs the convenience of immediate access. Archaeological footprints demonstrate that these communities were willing to endure difficult transport conditions if it meant minimizing exposure to rival groups. Moreover, soil stratigraphy indicates repeated occupation of these remote zones despite fluctuating rainfall, suggesting settlers valued predictability of threat more than predictability of water. The interplay of fear, resource insecurity, and opportunistic positioning forms a more accurate model of their decision-making than simple distance-to-water calculations.
Before you hear the rest of the audio, you have time to go through questions 6 to 10.
As we push further, spatial modeling reveals nonlinear settlement clusters shaped less by water access and more by cognitive risk mapping. Early societies did not distribute themselves evenly. Instead, they evaluated potential threat corridors, routes that rival groups frequently used, identifiable by relic artifact dispersal. Settlements were positioned just outside these corridors, creating zones of partial invisibility where residents could observe movement without being seen. This strategic placement allowed early groups to anticipate incursions days before direct contact. Archaeological debris analysis strengthens this interpretation. Tools and pottery fragments are found disproportionately in edge territories rather than central living spaces. These peripheral zones seem to have served as both lookout points and flexible activity hubs, designed to maintain vigilance while remaining operational. Such findings imply early settlers practiced a sophisticated form of threat forecasting. They prioritized minimizing exposure over maximizing resource abundance, a counterintuitive but highly adaptive strategy. When integrated, these insights allow us to reconstruct settlement logic as a dynamic interplay of risk, mobility, and social psychology, rather than a simple reaction to environmental limitations. It reframes survival strategies in harsh environments as cognitively rich, anticipatory systems, rather than reactive adaptations.